Spurgeon here with RevZilla, and today we're taking a look at the 2018 XSR700 from Yamaha. Now, if this bike looks familiar to you, it should. The XSR700 was released in 2016 to Europe, and it derives its classically inspired styling cues from its older brother, the XSR900, which is actually a bike that we had the opportunity to ride a few years ago. The XSR900 is built upon Yamaha's wildly successful naked sport bike platform, the FZ09. And when it was introduced, it brought with it changes to technology, throttle response, as well as suspension. So the question that we're going to set out to answer in today's review is whether or not the XSR700 is going to be ushering in a wide swath of changes as well, or if it's simply an FZ07 with a different style to it. Now, while I'm getting ready to ride, you make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube to keep up with all the content we have rolling out at RevZilla.com. From first ride bike reviews like this one to full product reviews and gear reviews, we have a ton of content available for you at RevZilla.
So at a cursory glance, the XSR700 looks very similar to the FZ07, and a lot of that comes from the fact that they share the same engine and chassis design. And the engine that this bike is using is what made that FZ07 so wildly popular. You know, there's gobs of mid-range power here, great throttle response, and there's plenty of juice to squeeze out of this engine for experienced riders, yet it's approachable enough for a newer rider to hop on and still feel very comfortable. It's not going to be an intimidating engine. But the XSR is going to stand apart from the FZ07 in three ways: its ergonomics, its suspension, as well as its style. And I want to hit on ergonomics first, because if you throw your leg over this at a dealership, the first thing that you're going to notice is that it's going to sit a bit taller than the FZ07. You're going to couple that with a handlebar that's about 3 inches wider, and it's going to sit a little bit further up and closer to the rider themselves. And what that means is I have a more upright seating position, but with these wider bars, I can still get down and leverage this thing through the corners and have a sporting experience with it. Now, at 6'3", so many times, you know, you guys out there are watching these videos and you're like, damn, Spurgeon makes that bike look tiny. And I do. I'm a larger rider, but the one thing to note is I spent about 300 miles on this bike yesterday. I'll probably tackle about 300 today, and it's extremely comfortable. I don't feel like I'm cramped up at all. I've had a really great experience riding this bike from an ergonomic standpoint. Now, the second thing that's going to set the XSR700 apart is that it's going to get a revised suspension over the 2017 FZ07. When I say revised, it's going to have stiffer springs in the front, a stiffer spring on the shock, and you're going to get increased rebound damping as well as increased compression damping. And what you get is a bike that's much more compliant through the corners, yet it still offers you, a plush ride when you're riding through town. It still absorbs those bumps and bruises nicely. And you can see I'm 215 pounds, and while I might go with a slightly stiffer fork spring if I was going to own this, I'm ripping through the canyons, and I have no problem really starting to push this bike in a more aggressive setting. Now, I said that the changes that Yamaha made to this were based on the 2017 FZ07, and that's because for 2018, that bike is going to get updates all its own. Now, the final note here is definitely going to be the styling. It really draws on Yamaha's past while incorporating modern performance and modern reliability. You've got aluminum side panels to the tank, which can be removed and easily painted if you want to customize this. The rear subframe on this is going to be different than what we're going to see on the FZ07 in the fact that there's a removable loop, so you can easily customize the rear fender or change the seat and really change the look of this bike. And hopefully at this time you're getting the sense that this isn't just an FZ07 wearing a 1970s wardrobe. There's a lot more to it than that. But how much more? So at this point, let's find a place to pull over and we'll dive into my final thoughts from this first ride review.
So the question remains, is the XSR700 the same bike as the FZ07? Well, not exactly, but it's pretty damn close. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the FZ07 is a wildly popular bike. It's a favorite amongst new as well as experienced riders. And the XSR700, it's simply a different flavor. Now, yes, they've made some changes to the ergonomics as well as the suspension, but my guess is that most folks looking at this bike, they're gonna see one thing, and that's the style change. And as far as the style is concerned, I think Yamaha knocked it out of the park, even more so than they did with the XSR900. Those big bulky pods in the front of the frame, they're gone. The tank, it's more streamlined and it flows really nicely into the seat. The bike simply feels more balanced as a whole. Now that's not to say there's not some rough edges. Take a look at the turn signals. They're the same generic Yamaha turn signals that we've seen on every bike from them over the past, what, 10 years? You then got this headlight up front that doesn't work for my personal taste. I would have much rather seen that half chrome dome style that, in my mind, is more vintage in its aesthetic. And then you have all these extra cables up front. I think Yamaha could have done a better job of cleaning that up. With all that factored in though, they still built a hell of a machine and it looks great. It's really gonna work for those riders that like the appeal and the look of the XSR900. They simply have no use for all that excess power. MSRP on this bike, $8,500. That's gonna be a $900 premium over the FZ07. But from what I hear, sex sells. And I have a feeling that Yamaha is not gonna have that much trouble finding people that are interested in buying this bike. If you're not one of them, however, don't worry. The FZ07 isn't going anywhere. It's simply getting redubbed the MT for 2018. Now at this point in the review, if you want more information about this bike in front of me, you know what to do. Head over to Common Tread and you can read my first ride review of the XSR700. And as always, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube to keep up with all the content we have rolling out at RevZilla.com. Thank you for joining me today on this first ride review of Yamaha's new XSR700. I'm Spurge. Enjoy the ride.